really a part of the new book that's going to be. Oh, let me record. Okay, let me start over. This is today is going to be talking about the new book that's going to come out. I thought it was going to be April, but it'll probably be in May, and it's called The Phoenix Self. And that book is a continuation of Man from Autumn, because I have a couple of the characters in, and but this one's different because all the places that you find in the book are real. The monasteries and the techniques are real. The science is real. What I made up is an idea that Enrique, who's the character from The Man from Autumn, goes to the Vatican, and they let him in the secret archives of the Vatican. And then he researches there, and he finds that Methuselah is really um, not a person, but a group of people, which means then that there are several people who are Methuselah who lived for 300-400 years. So starting there, then he goes to one of the cardinals there, and the cardinal says, your mentor chose you to be a part of the Methuselah search, or the Methuselah path. And that's where it starts. And the Methuselah path, and by the way, if you practice it, it's going to increase your longevity because it's real good science, but I play a little bit with the imagination. And what he's told is that the Methuselah pathway has 5 attainments in order to reach what I call the Methuselah threshold, which was 130, had to reach 130. But in order to do that, you have to go through 5 attainments. And it just happens that those 5 attainments are extremely important in life, independent of whether you live 130 or 90. So what we're going to do today is talk about the first attainment and how it comes about. So Enrique, who is one of the characters from The Man from Autumn, goes to the first attainment, and this is in Cantabria, in the monastery of Santoribio, which is a real monastery. And Cantabria is in the north of Spain. It's the northern part of Spain, right next to Galicia. And he goes there, and the abbot is Father Lorenzo. And he's the one who's teaching him the first attainment. And what the first attainment has to do, and this is something that we'll do with each of you if you want to, is that you have to, in order to really begin the journey of longevity, you have to have a cosmology, is what they say. And the cosmology is really the model that you have of belief systems of what you're doing here on Earth and what's going to happen to you after you leave Earth. And they say that it's very important. And when I say they in the characters, but it's really good science, that it's very important to be able to do that, because if you do that and you work it through, then you get rid of the fear of death and the fear of loving. And the fear of loving comes very subconsciously because we're afraid of losing the people that we love, that eventually they're going to be gone and that we're going to be gone. So when you create a cosmology, then you live that cosmology, and the fear begins to dissipate, and you stop fearing death and you stop fearing loving. So it's very important to have a cosmology. And what Father Lorenzo teaches Enrique is that since theology can't tell you what's going to happen after life, they don't. You can pray and you can have theological arguments about the existence of God or not, but nobody can prove it to you. But science cannot disprove that God doesn't exist either. So you're left with a situation where you're going to have to find some belief system. And what Father Lorenzo says is that, hi, Beatrice, how are you?
Okay.
So what Father Lorenzo says is that since there's no proof either way, you have to create your own cosmology. And the reason it's so important, you're going to see how the implications that it has in your life. So if you choose a cosmology that says, okay, I am here, there's nothing beyond this life. When I'm dead, that's the end of everything. Then you're going to have to decide who you're going to love under those conditions, what you're going to do with your life under those conditions, what you're going to do as far as learning about yourself. You can't go to a higher order. You can't do any kind of mystical work because it's very concrete, very existential, and that's it. So then you live that life with the higher emotions and the higher cognitions, which you still are compassionate, you still have empathy, but you come at peace with yourself that that's what there is and there's nothing else. That's it. And there are many atheists that are happy and they're healthy, and but the research shows that if you believe that there's something, even if there isn't, you're going to be healthier because existentially you're going to feel that there's something there and you're not alone. That alone is good for the immune system. So even if it doesn't exist, uh, that's why Pascal, they call it Pascal's wager. Pascal said, whether God exists or not, it's better to believe that God exists. That's what he calls the Pascal wager. So that's one side. The other side says, okay, there is something beyond life. I don't know what it is, but there's something beyond life. And then the question is there intelligent design? The atheist does not believe that there's intelligent design. That believes that it's nature and it's there's no designer. And the problem they have with it, they might even believe that there's a design, but the problem is that they ask then, so who's the designer? And they have a problem with that because they don't believe that there's any design. And you have to have a lot of faith to not believe that because life and all the complexity of the universe, it just didn't happen by chance. Because on Earth, there was almost like Frankenstein, there was some microorganisms and the lightning hit one of the microorganisms and it created carbon, and carbon and oxygen got together. And then you got an amoeba, and then amoebas coming together, and then millions of years later, here we are. It takes a hell of a lot of faith to believe that that's how it happened, but some people do. So then, if you believe that there's an intelligent design, that this is not just random, then you have to ask yourself, is there a designer? And theology will tell you, yes, there's a designer, there's a God, there's a love. Spinoza, who was a Dutch philosopher, said that God is nature. That's another way to look at it, that nature is God and the wisdom of God is in nature, and you can actually see that nature has a design for you. So you see the implications that if you don't have a clear understanding of where you are or who you are and what's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of existential anxiety. And then Kierkegaard, and these are great minds, Kierkegaard was the father of existentialism. And by the way, all these things will affect your health and your wellness. And Kierkegaard said that when we have questions about physical things that we can't answer, it causes anxiety. And you have a particular situation that's physical. You don't know where the money's going to come from. You don't know if you're going to be loved. Those are existential things, and they cause anxiety. But he said, if you want to go to something that's not physical, it causes anguish and terror. And the only way, he says, that you can come out of that is by what he calls a leap of faith. And the leap of faith says, there's no evidence. I'm just going to jump into the leap of faith, and I'm going to believe that there's something there. So that's one of the ways to deal with it, one of the ways to handle the existential question that nobody can answer for you. And when I talk to centenarians, they all have a clear cosmology. There are very, very few atheists, but the ones that are atheists, they're atheists and they're fine with being atheists and they're fine with being food for the worms and no problem. Oscar Niemeyer was a centenarian. He was the one who designed Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. And a friend of mine uh, that I visited many times in Brazil was an old man when I met him, but Burle Marx, Roberto Burle Marx, designed Brasilia with Niemeyer. And Niemeyer was still writing, and he's an architect, and he was still very active till he died at 106. So he was a centenarian who's an atheist. But most of them are not. Most of them believe that there's something there, and most of them believe that there's something beyond life. What is the other implication? The other implication is that if you don't believe that there's anything, then you can't pray to anything, you can't ask for anything, and there's really nothing out there. There's no synchronicity that you can count on. There are no guides. So if you're a non-believer and you say there's nothing beyond, then your life is going to be, where do I get my wisdom? And you might say, well, biologically, I have a lot of wisdom from the 150,000 years that we have as Homo sapiens. And so if I meditate, I could get information from that. All right, that's fine. That's one way to do it. If you believe, then you can say, well, I can ask angels, or I can ask guides, or I can ask something greater than myself for help and wisdom, and you'll get it. So either way, it works for you. But one is more rich than the other, as far as I can tell, because it allows you all kinds of access to things, and it gives you a sense of peace. And then synchronicity can be seen as, okay, here's information that I can follow that is taking me somewhere, because of synchronicity here, because there's a design in the world. Rather than synchronicity, oh, it's no big deal. It's just a coincidence and a statistical error or whatever. So you see the implications of how that works. Okay, let me stop now because I gave you a hell of a lot there. And if you have any questions or any concerns, let me know, because we're gonna build a cosmology for you. But let me know first how it's hitting you, and if you have any questions. And with a small group, we have plenty of time to ask questions and comments and anything that, because this is the basis for the Methuselah threshold, but it happens to be, I think, the basis for your existence. Once you get that cleared up, it's out of your way, and now you can begin to live and enjoy and love and get rid of your fear. Okay, any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
When when people, like, they say they hit their quarter life crisis or their midlife crisis, is it because you're going through that existentialist, kind of crisis? I don't know. Is that related to them not, or that person having that, I guess, inability to really look at their existence of, like, where they are and who they are, or what's happening when those events happen in people's lives?
That's a great question, because what's happening is that now you know the portals. We can go to biocognition. They're portals, they're cultural portals that tell you at 7 you're a child, at 14 you're a teenager, at 40 you're middle age, and after that then you're old. So what happens is that without you knowing it, you're going to interpret your existential anxieties based on where you are. So if you're a teenager, say, oh, my existential anxiety is that I need to get a new download. And what's the plans for the future? Well, I'm going to a rock concert. That's so that, but then when you get to 40, you say, oh my God, half of my life, but all of that is cultural. It's nothing to do with biology. You put the attribution based on the portal that you're in. So for this kind of thing, you want to ask yourself, what portal have I put myself in? I have all the other people put me in. And you want to do is you want to say, I want to break away from those portals, and I'm going to live portalless and ageless. And then when you have an existential issue, you deal with it independent of the age. If you have an existential anxiety, you deal with it at 20, at 40, at 50, or at 80, or whatever. And then it takes you out of that portal, that fishbowl that puts you into a bad place. Because, for example, if you are into the bowl of the retired and you start having existential questions about your life and afterlife, and you haven't worked out your cosmology, you get a tremendous amount of anxiety, a lot of existential anxiety, because you haven't resolved that. You haven't worked it out. And once you resolve it, then you do the leap of faith, whether it's atheism or whatever, and you jump and you say, I'm going to live as if this is my truth, and this will be my truth. And your body will begin to adjust to that, and you begin to reduce your anxiety, your existential anxiety, and your transcendental anxiety too. And then you'll love and you'll do all the things based on what it is, based on, if I'm never going to see you again because I love you, then I'm going to love you as much as I can. If I'm going to see you somewhere in heaven, that's fine, and we'll see you in heaven. But the point is that you got to resolve it. Otherwise, the anxiety keeps eating at you. So that's a great question. And so I'll bring biocognition in so to help you, since so all of you have read the books and so forth.
Thank you.
Sarah, you looked like you were going to ask a question.
Yes, I'm just trying to formulate it in my head because it's a little overwhelming. So I don't know if I'll articulate it well, but what I'm seeing a lot is, like, for folks that really have that very sure sense of, like, religious belief or afterlife. I see it a lot in, like, Christian within the community that I work with too, which is really a very poor white community with a lot of diversity that's sort of newly arriving. Yeah. And there seems to be, while like I hear that the faith is sort of like almost alleviates that fear of dying or that fear of loving. I see almost the opposite in that it tends to be a population that's very fearful of the world, at least through this last year and through COVID, in terms of very like that QAnon thinking, in terms of very fearful around population control, like, end of life, like things that are in the Bible of sort of what's happening within the world right now. And what I'm seeing is like people living in a constant state of fear, but that also have this very higher power thinking that's sort of driving them, that this is sort of the devil reincarnated. We're all getting influenced by media, which I'm all for questioning media and all of these things, but it's very much like, the vaccines are population control. Bill Gates is running all of this. It's really like this thinking. So I'm just curious your thoughts on that mindset, how it aligns with religious and this sort of like strong belief that there is something after this life. I don't know if I'm kind of rambling.
No, yeah, no, I know what you're saying. And this is important because once you create your cosmology, it doesn't mean that you buy all that the religion has to offer. You create an understanding of your religion. So, for example, if you buy the cosmology, let's say you're Catholic or Protestant or Jewish, it doesn't matter. You buy that cosmology completely, then you're going to live with the fear of being punished and the fear of sin and the fear of those kind of things. You got to have a cosmology based on your beliefs of how that religion needs to be interpreted in your world, because no theologian is going to die for you. No theologian is going to be there afterwards for you. So you might as well say, okay, I'll take the Catholics, but I'm not going to go into the sin and I'm going to burn in hell forever. I'm not going to take that, because all of those things are translations and mistranslations from monks writing sacred texts and passing them on and on and on. And some of them made them convenient for themselves, because the whole idea was to control. And I talked to some really good theologians, people in the Catholic Church and other religions that are truly academic theologians. And one of them, a cardinal, told me that the thinking is that back in the medieval times and even before that, they had to have something to control people so they wouldn't be savages and so they wouldn't kill each other. So they had to create the concept of hell and the concept of retribution in order to have some control. But that most of the real theologians don't believe that there's a hell in the Catholics or the Protestants, because the word comes from the old Hebrew, even from the Aramaic, and even before that. And really, the word for hell means shallow grave. It has nothing to do with burning in hell. Christ never said that. St. Augustine invented that in about the 3rd or 4th century, because he screwed around for quite a while, had illegitimate children. And then when he said, okay, I'm going to find the Lord, then nobody could sin. So anyway, that was the deal. So you want to deal with your religion and make it what you want to live and what you want to believe, whether it's a religion or not, or like Spinoza did, which he said, okay, my religion is that I believe that there's order in nature, and I'm going to look for nature to bring me wisdom. How nature deals with the world, I will understand. And there's some anthropologists that say that nature is basically our way of expressing our culture. That's one of the interpretations. That ways of expressing our culture is what nature is, because everything seems to work very similar, and all living things have to go through biochemistry with a carbon. It has to have a carbon, and if it doesn't, then it's not alive. So there's order. So that's the idea. Then any other questions? Because those are really good questions when you ask. They're really important because they help you in creating the cosmology that we're going to be creating, or at least the beginning of it. Well, it'll be like your homework too. And it's very, very good to spend time on that, because later, then you can create some mystical components. So I'm going to do a workshop sometime on the mystical. And the mystical basically is the immeasurable part of you. So it could be science. It could be contemplative psychology. What is the immeasurable within you, and what are the information that you can get from contemplation and all kinds of things that you can do. So it all has implications, and whatever gives you peace, then that should be your cosmology, because you're the only one who can live it. Nobody can live it for you, and nobody can die it for you. But I'll say something about the COVID vaccines. This is a paid political announcement. No, this is how I feel about it from my background in immunology. The three vaccines for the US is Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson and Johnson. Okay, Pfizer and Moderna, what they're doing is they're creating GMOs. They have more engineers working for them than doctors. So I should tell you something. Neither good nor bad. It's just it's your body. But what they're doing is they inject you with an artificially engineered chemical that forces the body to create something like the virus. And then when the body creates something like the virus, then the immune system will create antibodies to fight the virus. And that's nice. That works really well. But the immune system doesn't like it when people screw around with it, when they put artificial kinds of things in it. So yes, it's getting there. It's creating the proteins that look like the virus, although it's not. So then the immune system gets tricked and creates antibodies, and that's fine. But what they don't tell you, number one, is what is the long-term effect? They don't know. And number two is what does the immune system do later after those chemicals have been transformed and the immune system is responding to some fake virus? That's one question. If you want to do it. It's fine, no problem. Now, Johnson and Johnson is different. They all have their problems. So Johnson and Johnson, only one shot rather than two shots. And what they do is they use the old-fashioned, well-proven method where they give you RNA fragments of a dead virus that looks like the COVID-19, and then the immune system creates antibodies directly because there's a virus there. But the virus doesn't hurt you because it's dead. What you're going to have is maybe a headache or flu symptoms because that's the immune system fighting something that are. So if you're going to take it, I would suggest, which is your decision, but I would suggest Johnson and Johnson would be better if you have to take it or if you want to take it. But there's a lot of control. This has been weaponized. The vaccine has been weaponized. The virus has been weaponized. And so if you're a little paranoid about it, that means you're healthy. Because you're just not going to sit and take it. And what Fauci says, he's a long-term bureaucrat, hasn't practiced medicine in 30 years, and he's very well knowledgeable, but he's looking for power. So you have to be careful because your body.
Yeah. And so I just have a follow-up question that I don't want to derail it, so we don't have to get there. It could be like a time for later, but because I agree with that, and I have like just gut instincts, like I have a lot of hesitations around getting vaccinated. But when we think about subcultures, it feels like within my family, within the workplace, there is like this almost like belief of I'm being selfish by not doing it, and that I'm being like duped by this conspiracy mind when I'm not doing it. And so it's hard to stay firm in my own gut instincts and like beliefs without feeling pressure. And I just feel like I work in a hospital setting. So pretty soon I know the flu vaccine is required. I feel like it's going to be required soon. And so how to deal with sort of that anxiety around being forced to make medical decisions that you may not really be comfortable with, but at the same time I need my job. So yeah, I don't know what to do.
Christiane Northrup came up with something really very good the other day. She's pretty much against it. And she's a world-class gynecologist and knows a lot about immunology. She said, what would happen, because now eventually you're going to have to carry a card that says that you've been vaccinated. She said, what would happen if they force you to carry a card that you're HIV negative? It would be outrageous. Oh, you're against the gays. So it's all political. I had to deal with it. Thanksgiving, my son's wife is a doctor. Her mother is a doctor and her father is a doctor, and they've all been vaccinated, and that's fine. So they were going to have Thanksgiving dinner, and they said, "Are you going to be? You're going to get it? No, I'm not getting the vaccine." So I said, "Look, please, I will not be upset if you don't invite me. I'm not going to get the vaccine, but if you don't invite me, I will not be upset." So I went ahead and bought turkey and all the things that to eat by myself. That was it. And finally they said, no, look, it's okay. Come over. We're fine. So you have to live with your consequences. But the problem you bring up, which is really very real, is that it's your job. You know, you have to do it. So if you do it with the one that you think you're most comfortable with. I may have to do it also because I have to go to Poland. I'm doing some consulting there with the Longevity Center. And Poland is pretty locked down now, but eventually it'll open, and I'm sure they're going to require the vaccine. So if I want to go to Poland, then I'll get the vaccine, and if I do, I'll do Johnson and Johnson. But it's a definite manipulation. Viruses come and viruses go. I have a friend who's 91, and I asked him if he's going to have it's going to take it. No, I took the flu vaccine and I got the flu, so I'm not going to do it. I'm fine. So it's an but you have to take responsibility. If something happens, well, that's my choice. That's how it is. Just like the cosmology. If you're wrong and there's no God, well, that's how it goes. But if you're right and there's a God, hey, I was right. So you take responsibility, and that's what they're trying to kill in this country. They're trying to kill individuality and responsibility. Everything is groupthink. Everything is, they're doing some atrocious things with women, with girls. There's something called gender dysphoria, which means that, as you know, that some of you are in mental health and so forth, that some people, some kids up to adolescence have a real concern about their sexuality, about their gender. And they have a lot of, they get depressed, that's called dysphoria. And when they have that problem, then you have to address it later when they decide, am I going to be gay? Am I going to be lesbian? Am I going to be bisexual? But you have to wait for the person to develop psychosexually. Now, they're looking at girls who are 3 and 4 years old and asking them what their sex is. And in some cases, some girls have gotten permission from their parents to get transsexual operation. That's child abuse. That's ridiculous because you don't have the psychosexual maturity to know what you're going to be. And then this one woman that wrote a book, actually, she says she's been very depressed. She's been suicidal because she was having a lot of existential anxiety that I'm talking about here. And she thought that it had to be with gender issues. So she talked to her friends and look at the pressure of the peer group. Oh yeah, no, look, you're having gender problems. You're going to be you're going to, it's your problem. So go ahead and get some surgery. Imagine that. And now she's devastated for the rest of her life. So what happens is that when politics gets into science, it messes it up. And politics has gotten into science, religion, sociology, anthropology, anything. And it's really bad. So now it's extremely important to have your cosmology, so you don't get bombarded with the pseudoscience that you're getting, because that's pseudoscience. And when you have your cosmology, you have peace, and then you put the information through your cosmology. What makes sense for me? What is it that I believe? What am I willing to fight for? So that's why it's so important to have this as your base. And then the others, there are another 4 that at some point will probably do it. And well, when the book comes out, you can read it, but you're getting privileged information here. Nobody knows about this except you. So don't go and sell it and get somebody to write a book for you. Okay. Any other questions before we go on? Or comments?
I have to say that even in like really small groups, like I just like think about like my family, like Sarah was saying, you get that group think. And when you're like, you're trying to like be an individual, kind of stand out, they kind of look down upon you. I've noticed it at work too. Like people are afraid to kind of speak up or maybe, go against what someone has stated, or just, so I have noticed that it is, I hadn't noticed it before. I think it was just because.
And it's ridiculous. I'll give you an example. Tennessee is fairly open. It's more conservative, and it means that it's more open to. But I go to a restaurant, a Kurdish restaurant that I like, and you have to wear your mask. When you get to the table, you take your mask off. So there are no viruses there, but the viruses are somewhere else. I go to the Y to work out. You have to put your mask until you get to the place where you work out, and then you can take it off. It's ridiculous. But people follow, like groupthink. Okay, I got to, and if I want to go to the Y, I have to do that. In other places, you have to put it on for certain things. But now, if you want to go and riot and burn, then you don't need a mask because that's okay. You can do that, and the viruses aren't going to bother you. It's ridiculous. So the cosmology is going to be a very important component here. Okay, any other questions or comments? Please feel free, because this will stay here. This is totally confidential. And what I want to do is I want to help you develop your cosmology and then develop it. Get it and then develop. You have to develop it because it doesn't come, and you have to develop it when crisis comes in or when you have challenges. Okay, how do I fit this into my cosmology? And there's a richness to it. Whatever it is a richness to it, because you can put things through a model rather than through something that's totally chaotic that you don't know what it is. Okay. Okay. Any more comments or questions? Feel free. Samantha, do you have any questions? You always come up with questions.
I have a lot of questions, but they're not ready yet.
Okay. They're birthing, right? Okay. All right. Okay. So now what we can do is, based on that, you can begin to ask yourself, what is it that makes me comfortable that could be a potential cosmology for me? Number one, what am I doing here? What am I doing here on Earth? Am I just some kind of a chaotic process of a sperm and a cell getting together and an embryo becoming me? Or do I have a purpose? And this is extremely important if you feel they have purpose, because remember we talked about eudaimonia, pleasure with purpose, service, and meaning. That's very important. So you have to know what you're doing here. What am I doing here? I think I'm here to teach and to learn and to use my gift of creativity to help other people be creative and come up with ways that they can reduce their suffering and increase their wellness. So that's what I'm doing here. Beyond that, then I can tell you more about my cosmology, but I want to find out more about you. So you begin to ask yourself, number one, what am I doing here? And I'm going to ask each of you, what do you think you're doing here? If you don't know, make a note and make that your homework. What am I doing here? That's extremely important existential question that we need to ask. So who wants to start? We'll go through the group as a small group. So you have plenty of time to talk about it.
I can start.
Okay.
Actually, it's funny. My husband and I were talking about that last night, thinking, why are we here? What is the plan? Why are we here on this planet? So, and I don't have an answer. But for myself personally, I am spiritual. I'm not religious, but I am spiritual. I believe there's many gods. I probably would be closer to Spinoza, like looking at nature.
Yeah.
For instance, when I travel, I always believe in magic of place, and I like to explore and find something magical there. For instance, when I go to Hawaii, I usually do like a small ceremony on the beach to thank Pele for sharing her island with me, just out of a respect. So I like to look at what's going on with the country, the myths and legends and the cultural beliefs, and kind of do something, a nice ceremony out of respect for those people, for the people.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll give you hints and ways for you to formulate it. First, what you're doing, ceremonious, like Spinoza, you're going there and you're thinking nature and you're doing a ceremony. All of that has a biological effect. If you go there and you say, oh, those are so a bunch of rocks and then some oriental looking people and that's it, that's one way. The other one is that I can respect the nature, I can respect the culture, and that gives you a sense of connection and meaning that is immunologically enhancing. It has a power. So one of the things you can begin to do to ask your question is that, what do I do effortlessly that I feel comes to me in a way that other people notice it and they think this is really great that you're doing? That's one question, and that's what I had to ask myself about the creativity. Creativity comes very easy to me. I'm very comfortable with it. So that is one of my purposes, and my creativity to share it with myself and with other people. So those are the hints you can begin to ask yourself. So what would be, for you, Beth, what would be something that you consider to be natural and a gift that you have, or a capacity that you have?
Well, I have kindness. I'm a compassionate person. I work with animals. I volunteer at the Marine Mammal Center, working with sea lions and their rehabilitation and rescue. So I guess I've had people tell me that I make them feel good. So I would say I could have a sense of healing in a sense that I make them comfortable.
Okay, so you're here to bring peace to others and to yourself, to reduce the suffering. Rehabilitation is another way of getting animals or people back into their best. So you can begin to explore that. You can begin to explore. Okay, I'm here. I'm a peacemaker, for example, and you start looking for archetypes: the peacemaker archetype, or the healer archetype, or the wise woman archetype. Whatever it is, you start looking at archetypes because the cosmology is going to need archetypes. So that would be one way to get started with it. And then you can work with your spirituality. You can say, okay, I'm spiritual. I don't know what's there, but I know there's more than what's here. And I'm going to live as if, and then I'm going to reconcile that model with the people that I love. And if your model says, okay, after it's over, consciousness continues, and I will continue to have that connection with other people at another level that I don't even know, my brain doesn't know, but it's there. So what it does is it begins to take your fear away for loving and your fear for dying. Because you say, when it comes, then I have a model for that. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but nobody knows, so I might as well have a model. It also reduces your anxiety, that actually reduces your longevity. Because centenarians are not afraid of dying. They don't live to not die. They just, the way they live is what makes them be centenarian rather than the other way around. So
it's interesting. My father always believed, he was into philosophy. He has a PhD in political science. He passed away from cancer a couple of years ago, but he wasn't afraid of death. He always believed there was something beyond death. He believed that we were energy fields, and so may our physical body died, the energy goes somewhere. So I always had that concept in my head that there's something more. I don't know what it is, but there's something to look forward to in a different realm.
That's right. And the thing to remember is that nobody knows. Theologians don't know. Scientists don't know. So you have to figure it out yourself. And that is a heavy existential thing to do. But if you don't do it, then if your dad hadn't had that cosmology, he would have been fearful of death. And I'll tell you something that I found in some of the research and the talk that I have with people in hospices. People in hospices do some very difficult work. They're there and they know that the people that they're treating are all going to die, and they're there to die. So the question is, when you ask them, so who has a peaceful death and who doesn't? And they tell you, not in these words, but basically they're saying, if people have lived a life where they know who they are and they don't have a lot of lamenting to do, they're peaceful. People who don't know what's going to happen, who are lamenting what they could have done and they didn't do, they have a very terrible death, very fearful death. So that should tell you something, that even at dying, it could be peaceful. And it could also give a model for other people to, like he gave you a model that says you don't have to be afraid. Look, I'm going, I'm not, I don't have to be. So you see the value that these kind of things have. Mm-hmm. So that's really good. So you could work on that and begin to find your archetype, your main archetype, because archetypes change according to the context. I just did a Samantha interviewed me on it's on YouTube about archetypes. So if you get a chance, go to my YouTube page, and if you do, subscribe, because that's really important.
I already have.
Oh, perfect. If you haven't, then subscribe, because you'll get information on your feed of when I have a new. But go to that video. It was done today, and it'll talk about the different archetypes and how to use them, and then you'll see how it'll fit into this kind of thing. So you have a cosmology that you can work on, and you can begin to look for archetypes that fit your overall cosmology. Although you could be a wife, a mother, a friend, but the cosmology of in your archetype would be peacemaker or healer or whatever you. Mine is teacher, visionary. I try to go to the future and come back and bring things that other people may not see. So that's good. It's good. And you can work on it. This is the beginning. You work on your own cosmologies. We're building it now. And but you know you have a model now of where to go and how to find out. Okay, who wants to be next? Well, Sarah, that smile told me that you're next. I'll just go up like this so it'll be fair.
Okay. I think this is like such a hard question because there's so much uncertainty, and I think I get anxious at not knowing.
Of course.
I think what has resonated with me the most in terms of my own personal like evolution and growth is really around that energetic sense of sort of like recognizing that I've dealt with a lot of loss and a lot of loss within the work that I do. And so I've been to a obscene amount of services and I've felt like spiritual connections before. So I feel like I know somehow that there's something greater, and I believe that energy cannot be, destroyed and it's sort of transferred somewhere. I just don't know what that really
Yes. And
is.
that's okay. And be at peace that you don't know, because nobody does.
Mhm.
So the key in this is that you don't have to know if it's true or not. It's an as if world that you create, and that your biology will follow then, because nobody can tell you. Somebody could tell you, but say, okay, let me check it out and say, but nobody can tell you. It's yours. And that's the beauty of it, but also the fear of having to come up with your own existential definition of who you are. But what would be your gift that you have that you think you brought here to this earth?
I think I've been told that I have an ability to see people and connect with people that others may struggle with. I do a lot of work in addictions, and I do a lot of work in the criminal justice system. So I work with a lot of people I do a lot of work in jails and prisons, and I tend to build really good relationships with clients of all ages and walks of life. And so I think there's something that continues to be said, that I can see people like as themselves without all of the stuff. So I think that's one of the strengths.
Okay. And what would you call it? Bonding or?
Yeah, like connect, like a more like authentic connection with people without sort of judgment.
Okay, a communicator or a connector.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. So you can begin, and you can play with those archetypes as a working model. Then later you can drop it and pick up another one, but you can start with one and then see how this fits, and then begin to become very aware of what you're doing to apply that archetype. And you'll see that you'll be able to see even more things that right now are just passing you, because you're saying, okay, now I'm creating my cosmology, and I know that I have that ability to bond with people and to be a connector and a communicator with them. Well, that's part of my reason for being here. But you don't want to take it, and I'm saying this to everybody, you don't want to take it as only giving it to others. You have to give it to yourself too, so you don't become a caretaker. You give it to yourself, because that's one thing that I find in nursing, especially, and even in the hospices. Many of them are excessively overweight. They eat a lot of junk food. They're diabetics. They have all kinds of problems because they're taking care of others and not taking care of themselves. So you want to be careful in your
I
cosmology.
struggle with that a lot.
Yeah, and that's why, because they're taking care of everybody. But when you don't do it with yourself, then you're doing it to be loved or to be nice or to be something else. When you do it for yourself, then it's real. It's inclusive compassion, what the Buddhists call inclusive compassion. So that would be good. So I'm giving you some caveats here so that you can put it in perspective. Great. Okay, Beatrice, what's yours?
I think I'm a seeker. Like, I guess since I was a kid, I always, I've just wondered about, the world, and just where like my family comes from, and just like seeking different ways of doing things. I don't know. That's kind of what I can think about. Or, I like to connect the dots with people and ideas. And in my own family, I think I'm a bit of an outlier.
Oh, welcome. Thank you. That's
So
good. You got to be weird to be here.
right. So that's kind of what I think. But again, I don't know either, like Sarah.
No, we're all searching. We're all constantly searching. It's not like it's done. You always cultivate it, and it gets better and better. So what would be your purpose, you think? What do you think you're doing here?
I think I'm seeking peace and um and connection with others, you know, that kind of like what Sarah was saying, like that bonding, whether
Okay.
it's with my family, whether it's with my, you know, coworkers, or you know, just like even with strangers, like some, you know, like I'll walk around the block and I want to have like that bonding, so I'll smile to them, you know. Um, so yeah, that's what I think I'm here for.
Okay, so you can start working on that model, like the others, Sarah and Beth. You notice that there's some similarities here, and they all have
Mhm.
to do with connecting with people.
Mm,
And it's
mhm,
very important because the connection with people is really what what advances the species, not in a Darwinian way, but more in a meaningful way. So that's really
mhm,
good, and you can begin to then look at, okay, if I'm doing this here, then when it's time for me to go, I'm going to learn how I can do it better in another space, or how I
mhm,
can do it differently.
mhm,
Um, and that will give you the whole idea is if you get peace, peace of mind, peace of existence, no matter what you believe, your body will respond to that. Your brain doesn't question what you give it. It does it. If you say there's nothing here and the world is terrible, it'll begin to bring out all the stressors and everything. But if you say this is good, they're bad people, they're good people, but overall, I'm in a good place, then it settles.
mhm.
So
Okay.
that's good. All right.
Thank you.
Kristen, what about you?
Well, yeah, I probably consider myself to be a bit of an outlier. Um, I've pretty much gone against the grain all my life, actually.
Great.
But I think the difficulty for me is that I've not dealt with it very well, in the sense of the way people have reacted to the ways I've done things. Probably at the moment, first and foremost, I'm a mother of three girls, and I've in the last 6 months taken two of my kids out of school. So I'm homeschooling, and I've met with a lot of anti, what are you doing, crazy woman attitudes. But I guess the reason I did it was I want, without sounding arrogant, I feel I can do a better job. I want to offer my kids sense of freedom, choice.
Yeah.
I want them to be able to think outside the square. I want them to have a childhood. I want
Yeah.
them to play. I'm a really creative person. I want them to be creative. And I sort of want them to create their own worlds, because I feel schools can be quite damaging in some respects. Years ago, I studied shamanism, so I did a lot of shamanic journey work, and that really helped me kind of see the world in a different way. It's reconnecting them with nature, connecting them with myself, ancestors. So yeah, I've done a lot of work on myself, and yeah, I feel I would like to be able to offer what I've learned to my kids. So I guess I'm a bit of a seeker like you, Beatrix. Um, I want to be able to just, but like this work, I want to be able to open doors to them that are outside of cultural constraints, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does, and you're right. In general, the school systems have failed, and it's global. It's not just in the United States. And actually, the best universities in the United States are giving you the crappiest education because it's all groupthink, acquiescing, social constructivism,
Mm,
postmodernism, all the things that have nothing to do with the individual.
mm,
So then you can do seeker teacher archetype and begin to ask yourself, how much am I teaching myself? You already have, because you've gone through shamanic journeys and things like that. But then look at your cosmology as something that has purpose. You have a purpose, and the whole idea is each of us have to have a purpose. And the important thing here is also that you're going to be challenged by the groupthink.
yeah.
And the reason that they do it is because you cause anxiety for them, that
Mm,
you're not conforming. When,
yeah.
when they feel uncomfortable that you're doing something out of the box, the only way they can deal with it, rather than seeing what you have to offer, is to criticize you or to see you as someone weird or someone who's just not getting it. And why don't you come back and think like us? So you got to be aware that in order to really get your cosmology, you're going to find obstruction. I found it in my profession. A lot of people have given me quite a bit of difficulties with the way that I think. I'm no longer a member of the American Psychological Association because it's become a political, it should be the American Political Association. The Medical Association has been the same way. Christiane Northrup left. So the people are very dissatisfied with what's going on.
Yeah.
This is why the cosmology has to be so important now, that you're getting all these kinds of belief systems that are not based on anything other than social constructivism. That has nothing to do with what the world is all about. And one of the things that made countries great, whether it's the United States or New Zealand or Australia, is the individualism. That's what did it, not groupthink. So that's very important. So then be aware that you're going to have obstruction and you're going to have a lot of challenging, but also because they are feeling the anxiety of you doing something different that they can't do, that they don't understand, or they're afraid to do. So that's why you get that. So the more they're against you, the more you're right. It's a way to look at it. Anytime that people criticize me, boy, that's really good. I'm doing something good right now.
Yeah, and I think historically I've felt hurt, you know, and I haven't had the understanding to look at it like that. I've just instinctively known that what I'm doing feels right for me, but I've felt kind of hurt at the backlash. So
Yeah,
it's been a real journey for me. Yeah.
It has. And now that you have a model, a cosmology model, then you can fit things in and begin to process them through the cosmology that you believe. And then other people, give them permission to believe what they want, but don't let them get in your face. That you can believe whatever you want, but I don't try to change my beliefs, because I'm going by my experience. And that again goes back to the personal truth and the cultural truth. The cultural truth is what you were told that reality is. The personal truth is the evidence that you have of what reality is, and you have to cut through that. So in the process, we'll do more of this later. If you like this, we could do maybe another attainment or continue with this one, because it's really an important one. Okay, so it's my turn. Whoa, oh boy, anxiety. No, I'm pretty clear on mine. I'm basically a teacher, visionary, and creative person. I believe that we are essence, we are bioinformational fields, and that when that happens to be in the body. When the body ends, I happen to believe that bioinformation stays and it goes somewhere, or it's not even local. It's a non-local thing. It doesn't go anywhere. It's there. And that information and that love, or whatever it is, connects with other people that you have loved, or people that you love, and that happens in an eternity. That sounds very naive. That's what I choose to believe, and has some value in quantum physics. Not the way they talk about quantum physics fields, no, but as far as that, that at some level we have a quantum field, and then when we stop being Newtonian, then we can become quantum, because we go into particles and all that. But it doesn't matter. You can't prove it. So I'm not even concerned whether I can prove it or not. But for me, it works because when I do my meditations, I seek information from guides, whether it's me or not. It doesn't matter, but it comes to me. Whether I want to call it nature, God, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just that I get information that if I were in some other place or some other model, I wouldn't be able to get that information. So, and I'm constantly refining it and bringing people into my life based on that belief, and the fear of loving other people and losing them has subsided because of that kind of model that I follow. But people sometimes ridicule it. Oh, that's crazy, and there's no such thing. Or you have to believe in hell. It doesn't matter. Let them do whatever they want to do. Smile, give them a Duchenne smile, which is like this, and that's it. You let it go. And then you go on. You go on with your life, because nobody can be born for you. Nobody can die for you, and nobody can feel your pain. So therefore, you are the agency of your journey, the architect of your journey. So, and if you have any questions, we can also entertain them. Okay, you're on, Samantha.
I see myself as a guide, a facilitator, and a mentor. And I believe that I'm here to help people get ready for and move through huge transformation processes in their life, whether that be an individual or a system. Like I think of systems who serve people, so healthcare, education, public service sector. Those are the areas that I am most passionate about and most committed to changing. So helping individuals who feel like they are outliers and change agents, helping them see in themselves the greatness that I see in them, and then creating processes for them to get ready and go through the change with it being joyful instead of tumultuous and terrifying. And the same for systems and organizations that serve people, getting them back to the roots and the essence of what they're meant to be doing with humans instead of benefiting themselves. How do they actually get back to benefiting a community?
And what about transcendental? What do you think? You think there's something beyond?
Do I think there's something beyond? Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. Any questions? Because we're going to do an exercise to teach us to make it easier to create that cosmology. But any questions or comments? This has been really very good. You all have some really good questions and comments and concerns, such as that's why you're here. So, any questions or comments?
How often should you, because you talked about different archetypes, and so do you check in with yourself like ever so often, or
Yeah.
how do you know you're in a different archetype now? Like, sometimes I feel maybe, oh, today I'm really creative, or I'm going through a creative process, and other times I'm feeling more like, oh, I'm really seeking. Is that how it works?
Well, that's a great question, because the archetypes, we have many archetypes available to us, and some are easier for us to take than others. So one of the ways to know, and to answer your question, you practice it mechanically for a while till it becomes second nature, like anything. Riding a bike, you have to really think about it to finally get proprioceptive and procedural kinds of, and you do it. Or when you're on when I first did that Swiss ball, you get on a Swiss ball to do. I thought it was no big deal to do crunches. I couldn't keep the balance. So I had to practice it and think it and do it. Now it's automatic. Same thing here. But what you can do is you can ask yourself, which is the archetype that I'm most comfortable with? For example, I have to be careful because my most comfortable archetype is the teacher. So that will tell you that you have to be careful so that you don't abuse it. So you don't take it everywhere. So you don't lecture everybody wherever you go. So the context will tell you what archetype to shift to. So if you have a child, let's say, and you're into the seeker archetype, when you have a child, you got to get out of the seeker and become mother. Or when with your partner, you have to become partner, lover, or whatever, so that you can then be in the right archetype with the right context. So this is why I suggest that you watch that video that I did today with Samantha, because I talk a lot about what the archetypes are and the biology of the archetypes. So that's the way to do it. If you don't know, ask yourself, what is this context begging for? If you're a child, the child's not going to say, I want you to be a lover. It's going to say, I want you to be my mother, or I want you to be my teacher, or whatever. So it'll be in the right context. Archetypes are made for context from many, many thousands of years of trial and error. So the information is all there. You just have to access it and then practice it. And you'll see that after you do it, it'll be flawlessly. It'll be just, you'll know how to shift back and forth, back and forth. And the other thing you can do is you can ask somebody that you trust to land you, what I call landing gears, partners or friends or whatever, even your kids. It's a double-edged sword, because if you tell your kids, let me know when I'm lecturing too much, they'll say, hey, you're lecturing. But you got to be careful. But people that you love, you can tell them, look, I want to give you permission to let me know if I'm out of, and explain the archetypes. If I'm out of the prototype that I need to be in, remind me so I can get back. And I do that with CEOs, with companies that I work with. I talk to the CEOs and their partners, or the co-workers, so they can get permission to land them when they're being too much of a visionary. Because you don't know. We've been doing it so long that you don't know when you're there. But if you give somebody permission to do it, don't get upset when they tell you because you gave them permission. Say, okay, thank you. Okay, let me switch here. Unless they're using it to manipulate you, then of course it doesn't work. That's why you have to have somebody that you can trust and somebody that's not going to abuse that power or that control that you gave them. So that's good. Okay, any other questions, concerns, or existential issues? Kundera is a Czech writer. He wrote a book called The Unbearable Lightness of Being. It's a great title. Uh, it's a novel, and he talks about the existential, and he calls it the unbearable lightness of being. Kundera, Kundra, I believe. He sold millions of books. Okay, so here you go. So you're asking for mother archetype right there. You don't need to do anything else. What do I need? Mommy. I don't need a lecturer. Okay. Any other questions? And we're going to do the technique. I'll show you the technique. Okay, what we're going to do is a contemplative state where you can bring in wisdom based on the cosmology that you're beginning to live out. So for example, we're going to do when you get into a contemplative state, then we're going to say, I'm going to say, for example, okay, see if you have any guide that's giving you any information right now, and interpret it as the guide being an angel, being your own wisdom, being a guide that's actually there helping you. Whatever it is, give it an interpretation and see how it feels with the information that you're getting. You're going to get information, whatever it is, but begin to bring it into your cosmology so you get comfortable with it and you can get attribution. You can give it cause when something is happening. So for example, if I have a question or something, I'll do a technique very similar to this. Okay, so I'm getting a guide. Who is the guide? I don't know. It could be me. It doesn't matter. But there's something beyond my own narcissistic self that tells me there's some wisdom that you can bring in, you can download. So, okay, any questions before we start? Okay, all right. So what we'll do is we'll get comfortable, and we'll go inward to that place where you have peace and serenity, and then we'll do the bring in your model. Okay. So we're going to what I call the theater of change. Remember, the theater of change happens when you go into relaxation and then contemplation. So first we'll do the relaxation and then we'll do the contemplation. Okay, so first you pay attention to your body because that's very existential. That's what you have. That's the equipment that you have. That's your temple. And give yourself permission to pay attention to your body that serves you so well. And sometimes you don't give it enough time for it to give you information. So now when you close your eyes, you're giving yourself permission to go inward and honor your body and your mind as something that has been with you from the beginning and will be with you forever at one level or another. So now we want to give it attention and we want to give it value. But you're worth the time you're taking now. And then we begin the journey of relaxation, really basically working on your muscles. And the way to do it, as you know now, you just work on 3 muscles. You drop your shoulders and you bring them back a little bit as if you're proud of yourself. Rather than hunch, which is a shaming, you bring them back, and actually that opens up your heart cavity. And you breathe better and your heart works better when you do that. Open up and bring your chest out. And then breathe. And go to your mouth and unclench your teeth. And take all the tension of the day away. And begin to look at the kindness within you. And releasing any anger or resentment you may have. Whatever it is, you let it go without thinking about it. Then your eyelids are the next part. And there you begin to let them fall softly over your eyes. And when you do that, you begin to release tension, especially around between your eyebrows, slightly above your eyebrows. And that part of the body, the corrugate muscles, generalize to the rest of the body when it relaxes. So slowly, you're letting your body relax. And we're going to do a new technique here to help you relax even more. We're not at the contemplative yet, but this will be a very powerful one that will clean out anything that's residual there. So what we'll do now is you imagine that you're breathing from your head, you're inhaling from your head, and exhaling from your head, your total head. And this one's easy because your head happens to have your nose. So it's coming in from your head, in and out. And what that does is it cleans out any residual that you have in your head related to your head, thoughts and whatever goes into your head. Then we'll go to your neck and begin to breathe as if you're breathing from your neck, inhaling and exhaling from your neck. If something comes up, let it pass. If nothing comes up, let it pass. But either way, your body's releasing, like from a steam room, releasing the hot into the cold. Then now you go to your chest and imagine you're breathing from your chest, like the heart math, heart breathing, going from your chest and exhaling from your chest. And then wherever it comes, let it pass like a film. You're not holding on to anything. This begins to get you into a deeper relaxation and opening the door for the contemplative part. Then you go to your stomach and you breathe as if you're breathing from your stomach. And you'll be able to do it. It'll feel like you're breathing from your stomach as you practice this. You'll become good at this. So you're inhaling from your stomach and exhaling from your stomach. That's where the oxygen's coming in. And when you're on your own, you do it as long as you want to. We'll do it faster here so you can have enough time to do the rest. Now go to your pelvic area and breathe from there. Inhaling and exhaling from there. And you're going to notice as you do this, there's some areas that are more blocked than others. That some are easier to breathe in and out, and others are more difficult. That'll give you information for later. Then go to your thighs and imagine that you're breathing from your thighs now, including your knees. Thighs and your knees. You're breathing from your thighs and your knees, and you feel the exhalation and the inhalation. The awareness is in your thighs and your knees. Then you go to your legs, your feet, your ankles, everything down all the way to your toes. And that muscle group, you're breathing in and breathing out. From your legs all the way to your toes, in and out. So this is getting you ready into a more contemplative state because you're letting go of all the junk that we accumulate in different parts of the body. We associate parts of the body with thoughts and emotions, and we're cleaning them out without having to do anything in a voluntary way. So now you go into observation. You're observing your body, you're observing your mind. You're no longer trying to relax, or you never try to relax. You just let your body do it. But now you're observing the observation. You're the observer of the observation, as if you were behind your observations, and you watch it. A thought may come in, nothing may come in. But whatever it does, you let it go. You don't hold on to it. So now see yourself, the theater of change, you're in the forest now. And it's a very comfortable place. It's a clearing surrounded by trees, and you're protected. Nothing can come in to hurt you. You're in a clearing in a magical forest that's protecting you. And you went to that forest. You're sitting there comfortably. You're covered. The weather is perfect, not cold, not hot. There's a slight breeze that's clearing your thoughts and your emotions. And you're sitting there and you begin to ask yourself, I want a guide to come in and give me some wisdom. That guide could be you. Depending on your cosmology, you can allow yourself to have a celestial guide, an angel, another being, or your own information from thousands of years. You can go back and bring an ancestor from 1500 years. Because remember, you had ancestors 150 years ago, 150,000 years ago. So they're a long history of DNA. And see if you ask, based on your cosmology, that entity, you, a guide, your ancestors, whatever, and ask a question and pay attention to see what comes. If nothing comes, don't worry, it'll come at different levels. But ask a question about what you're doing here, about your purpose, your joy, the people that you love, anything that you want to know about life, yourself, and then pay attention to it. And I'll let you work on it on your own, using your own new cosmology now. Then gradually begin to bring yourself back and breathe from your nose again, inhaling and exhaling, and feel yourself grounded on where you are right now in the place where you are. And you bring back some information that may be very clear to you or not clear at all, or a blank. It doesn't matter. It's there already. It's in the hopper. And it'll unfold itself based on your cosmology. Synchronicity, more information, it'll come if it's not there already. So I'm going to count from 1 to 5, then open your eyes, and we can discuss it briefly, anything that you want to discuss. And you'll see some really interesting things as we share some information here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you open your eyes, you welcome back. My model of visionary and leadership is by example, so I'll be the first one. As soon as I closed my eyes and I was ready to bring information in, my father came in. And I thought, my father? And I thought, well, and I've done this a lot, so it's easier for me to interpret it, but you can see my father, could it be fathers from the past? It could be my father. So I started entertaining it and I started letting the information in. So I'm getting some information that I'm maybe making it up. It doesn't matter. It's information. And my father left when I was about 12. And that caused a lot of abandonment for me and a lot of, maybe that's why I went into psychology. I don't know. But I heard not the voice, but the sense, the fragmentations of thoughts that said, you probably thought because I left that you were unworthy. I left because I didn't know how to be a father. And you're a very worthy person. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's information. And if you choose to take that information, it has a valuable psychoimmunological effect. And there was more, but that was the beginning. And it's really very, very comforting to get that. Whether it's coming from me, from a guide, from my father, doesn't matter. It's an as if interpretation. And they're called locutions. which it's not words or it's not image, but it's there. It's some implicate information. And the mystics pick up on a lot of those locutions. Okay, anybody want to share? You don't have to, but if you want to, I think it'll be good because I can give you more clarity from what you get.
I'm happy to share. I got to a place, I envisioned like a great grandmother who I'd never met. I never even met my grandmother before, but I have a lot of challenges in the relationship with my mother, and I'm trying to kind of make sense of a lot of that. And so I asked what I could do to feel better about the relationship, but also have her feel better about the relationship. Because I think a lot of her behaviors are sort of compulsive and she's not even aware of them. And they said, or this woman said, to be a model, like to embody, like model what you want from her, like sort of just because I think I get sort of resentful, and so I feed into old patterns. And so the message was that I don't like have to like hold on to that, basically, like to just model for her what it means to be a healthy, functioning adult in having an adult relationship.
That's beautiful. How did you feel getting that information?
It felt less personal. Like it felt like it was like this awareness from generation, like, because I've always felt that I don't think she caused it. She has her own trauma history, but I think that it just felt a little bit less personal because I get so frustrated and angry in the relationship and sort of grieving. Yeah.
And what emotion would you put to that thought of being the person?
I think more at ease. I've given our dynamics and the role that I've had to play to take care of her emotions my whole life, I've really lost sight of my own. So it's sort of sometimes hard for me to identify what I'm feeling at a given moment. It's very, I feel for other people more so.
Yeah.
But I think I felt more like at ease, less anxious.
So a calmness then, right?
Yeah.
Good. That's really great. It's really good. And the more you do it, the easier it'll be for this information to come in. And what it'll do is it'll give you peace, and it'll give you a place in your existential being by doing that. It's really very good. And it's good that you're sharing that. It's very good. Anybody else? We don't have to if you don't want to, but if you do, it'll be great to share.
I found it interesting, Sarah, that when I was doing the meditation, my grandmother, who I've never met as well, I've never met her, but I've always seeked like her essence or just like information about her. I've gone through great lengths to just get one picture of her. Like I've just always longed for the grandmother figure in my life. And so we were doing this, I could like see her long hair, it was like, it was kind of magical. And everything kind of was telling me like what she was telling me, not in words, but in her presence, that she's here because I'm longing for her, and she's always been there. So that brought to me like a lot of peace, because I too have very complex relationship with my own mother. So I think I've always kind of just wanted that, for me, like I feel like with my mother, I had to mother her. She had, she was really young when she had me, and like that pattern of like mothering your mother, she came her pattern too. And so I always longed like that motherly, like grandmother, I think that's probably like why I always seek her. But just having her presence in the meditation and just like reminding me that she's always been there. So I don't know what that means.
It's comforting, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you see all of it, it's the existential comforting that you do. And it helps you. Now, what you can do once you find these guides or whatever it is that you want to call it, then you can go back and meditate on it more. It may come more, or someone else or some other thing will come, but it doesn't matter. You can explore it and begin to see if there's any other information that you can get from that. That's good. Very good. Anybody else? Don't feel like you have to. It's if you want to, and if you don't, then that's fine.
I will. I will.
Okay.
I have a one of my biggest fears is fear of getting sick. I have a lot of cancer in my family. My father died of cancer, and my mother had a huge brain aneurysm and nearly died. And so it's something that it plagues me a little bit. So that was one of my questions. And in the bush, I didn't have any sort of ancestors, but I sensed. It sounds a little bit silly. I feel a little bit silly, but I almost sensed this big kind of forest god in the background. I couldn't see anything, but it was just like a kind of an energy. And I asked the question, will I be okay? And they said, you're doing everything right. You just have to believe it. And they said it over and over again. You just need to believe it. You just need to believe in yourself and your wellness. So it was repeated and repeated and repeated.
Wonderful. And you got some instructions there.
Yeah.
Everybody got some instructions, see? And wherever it comes from, it doesn't matter. You put it into your cosmology, and don't share it with anyone, because they're gonna start trying to poke holes in it, because they'll be too afraid to hear that. So
Yeah.
share. It's private with yourself or people that can handle it. And that's okay. But you notice that it's very profound, the things that happen when you do this.
Mm.
It's very good. Very good. Okay. Anybody else? We're about ready to close up, but it's time to.
Quickly, I think my message will come to me later. I tend to be an overthinker. I'm an executive assistant, so I'm in that,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it'll come to me later but my body was very relaxed. I felt at peace. But I think when I'm not focused on it.
It'll come. It'll come to you.
Probably.
And there's an expectation here for something to happen, that all of that. And there's something you practice on a regular basis, once a week or as long as you want to, and then you'll become very good at it, at picking up information, and you'll see that you have a tremendous source of information that you're not using, or wisdom that you're not using, and it's there. So yeah, you're right. It'll come to you, and you'll see, either through a synchronicity or some insight that you'll have. It'll be, oh, so there it is. You'll see it. So there's no. Very good. Very good. Samantha, anything with you before we end?
I have two things before we end. First, my reflection, similar to a couple of you, is the sense of grandmothers, but mine weren't my grandmothers. They were my great grandmothers. And I was trained as a Reiki master a couple of summers ago, and in that training pathway, the guides that I sensed with me when I do some of that work was like my primary guide as my great grandmother Lillian, and then 3 others that were my other great grandmothers. And the theme with all of them is that they grew up in really difficult times, and they were all really, really strong and good at communicating their needs and what they stood up for and what they were all about in the world, what their personal truth was. And I think they come to me because I spent so much time with my grandmothers growing up, who stand for being passive and ladylike. So in real life, my models growing up so much were about behave yourself, be quiet. And for me, expression is absolutely the most difficult thing in my life, expressing what I feel and what I think and what I believe. So that's what came back to me, was my great grandmother, reconnecting with that sense of guidance I get from them.
You did a hell of a job expressing yourself.
Yeah, I'm learning well.
Great.